And I, as my role as host of this program, will endeavor to answer your questions to the best of my ability using our Catholic Church, our tradition, our fathers, the scripture, our saints, our doctors, our theologians, our councils, and anything that I can muster to answer your question so that you walk away satisfied your question has been answered. Let me just take the statements that were made that Mr. Marshall or Dr. Marshall pulled out and give an interpretation of them that may just turn it around 180 degrees. It did for me. When I finally figured out what was going on, it turned it around 180 degrees for me. And that's why today, if you hear me teaching on Vatican II, and I wrote an article for, what was it, about 2 or 3 months ago, dealing with the statements of Archbishop Vigano, who thinks that Vatican II is the problem. And I said, basically in my, I'm sure he hasn't gotten it, because who am I? I'm a nobody. But I said, Vatican II is not the problem. Okay. Vatican II is an ecumenical council. Yeah, it doesn't have the, quote unquote, note of infallibility. Okay. But if you're going to attack Vatican II, you better be able to prove what you're saying. And that takes a lot of homework. And, if you want to sue the church, so to speak, by bringing your objections to the Vatican, you have every right to do so. But I hope you have a good lawyer, because you're going to need it. But we can all challenge certain things that are said. The only things that we can't challenge are dogmatic statements, where these are definitions, de fide definitions that the church has given us. But we can all challenge, but we have to understand the cost of challenging. It's not just like I have an objection and I want to get it off my chest, and I want to involve a lot of other people to get them behind me to show everybody that it's not just me thinking this way. Look at all these people that are coming on my program and they're agreeing with me. That's not the way it should happen. Okay. It's not a head count. We're not taking a head count to see how many people we can get to agree with us. And the cost is that if we're not correct, then we embarrass the church. Because when we're evangelizing, we're telling people, like, say, Protestants, we're saying, look, the reason I came to the Catholic Church is because it has the answers. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time another church is created, because the church has worked these things out. And it took centuries to work some of them out. So most of the homework has been done for me. There's only a few things left that, need to be ironed out. And we may come up with problems here and there in our modern society, and we'll deal with them. But the major stuff that puts Christianity together has already been dealt with. So I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's a very comfortable place to be. So that's what gets people into the church, the Protestants, the Jews, the Muslims, because, boy, you want to talk about confusion, go to some of their churches and listen to the confusion that you hear. Everybody believes something different on the simplest things and the most important things. So when we invite them, we want to show them that, yes, this church has the answers. We depend on our popes, our councils, our saints, theologians, doctors, our fathers, put them all together, and we come out with a true answer, you see. And again, there's our areas where we're still working on it, okay? But that's what invites people in. That's what gets them excited. Wow, you mean I don't have to fight my next door neighbor on doctrine anymore because we found the truth? Wow, what a nirvana that is. And so when we challenge the church, we got to be very careful, because we're putting a sign out there that says, well, it's not that way. Okay. You remember when I told you, we in the Catholic Church, we all believe the same thing? Well, I have to put an asterisk on that one now. So that's what happens when we start objecting, especially when we're dealing with councils. It's a different story when you're dealing with personal opinions of the Pope, because popes come from all different countries with all different backgrounds, educational backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, spiritual backgrounds, and some are conservative, some are liberal, some are ultra liberal, some are in between, and you have to take them as they come, and you adjust your Catholic perspective with each new pope that has come along. I've had to do it, how many times? 8, 9 times. Not so much when I was a child, but now that I'm an adult, you had to do some adjusting to each pope that comes along. After I've given what I would call the warnings against making your objections public, I'm not saying it's wrong. Okay, I'm just saying there's a price to pay. The price is logically that you're going to put the church on the carpet, and the church is not there to defend itself. Okay, because you have a website or you have a podcast or you have this. Do you see the church waiting to see what your next podcast is going to say and then have a rejoinder to you the next day or next week rebutting what you said? No, it just ain't going to happen. We know that. So we have to take that into account too, that the church can't speak for itself on the same level that we're communicating with all the subscribers to our program. Okay. So, the pot shots against Vatican II, they come left and right, down the middle, up high, down low, you name it. Vatican II has been suffering. And we have, as I said, Archbishop Vigano doing the same thing. And, what does that do? I mean, if they're wrong, what does that do? Well, that just puts a dirty mark on the church that it's not going to come off anytime easy. And so I just have to stress this. We just have to be, and I've learned this, believe me, being a Catholic apologist, I've learned this the hard way. And before you say anything, make sure that you've thought about the ramifications of what you're going to say, even if it may be the truth. Okay? Sorry to say that, but some people just can't take the truth. Okay? And you're going to spend more time, trying to swat away those flies than you are doing the actual work of God that he wants you to do. So in that sense, it's beneficial too, to make sure that you've done your homework. And look, I know Pope Francis, well, if there is any pope that we've ever had that is like a target, there's a target on his back, because I hate to say this crassly, but every time he opens his mouth, you wonder what's going to come out. Okay. And what was it, last week or a week before that, he said something very good, and I applauded him for it, which was, look what happens when you leave the church and you make your own church. And he was referring to the old Catholic Church. And he said, you know what they do? They have women priests. Because, and that's what happens when you create your own church. You fall off the edge into error. And boy, what an example of error that is. So he's to be applauded for saying that. Okay. But next time he'll come out and he'll say something like, Christ was contaminated on the cross. And you can tell he doesn't know his theology. And you can tell that he just read that scripture and didn't realize what was behind it in order for him to make the proper interpretation. He just didn't know, because if he knew, I know he wouldn't have said what he said.